At the age of 20, a man named Justin set off with 2 friends from the city of Bederiana in Thrace. With their bags slung over their shoulders, they walked the 400 or so miles of mountain and plains to the golden city of Constantinople. In the city, he joined the palace guard, and over the course of 30 years, he worked his way up to commander of the guard, and even became a senator. Justin and his wife Euphemia had no children of their own, but he still wanted someone to inherit his no considerable fortune. His sister, Vigilantia, had married a man named Sabatius, and they had 2 children, Petrus and Vigilantia. Justin sent for the boy Petrus. Justin had no education to speak of himself, but he knew of its value, and he bought the best education money could buy, which shaped the mind and temperament of young Petrus. Petrus caught his lucky break only because Euphemia couldn't produce a child of her own. Euphemia, in her time, had been a prisoner of war and was set to be sold as a slave when Justin took a liking to her. He purchased and then married her. Justin expressed his satisfaction with Petrus by legally adopting his nephew, who, according to Roman custom, took the name Justinian in gratitude for his new father. When the Emperor Anastasius passed away, Justin was well placed at the head of the only real soldiers in the city. Through some backdoor dealing, Justin managed to get himself acclaimed emperor, likely with the help of his new son, Justinian. While Justinian was raised in splendor and became powerful at a young age, the woman that he would later marry had no such luxury. Theodora, future empress of Rome, was the daughter of a bearkeeper named Acacius, who spent her youth in the hippodrome of Constantinople and later on the theatre stage. Theodora had a mischievous brilliance and had the kind of charm that could hypnotize men. She grew up in the theatrical world, which was looked down upon by well-to-do Romans, but was also a stimulating and lively atmosphere which shaped the young actress. The daughter of Acacius seems to have been determined to make something of herself. The first important enterprise that Theodora undertook was when she went to Egypt with Hecabolius, the governor of Pentapolis. It was an incredible rise for the daughter of a bearkeeper, but her time as an unofficial wife was short. It's not clear what happened between the pair, but Theodora ended up alone in Alexandria and began to work her way home. Her tour through the East seems to have been profitable, because when she arrived in Constantinople, she had enough money to buy a house and live comfortably. Constantinople, like any city in any age, had its fanatical sports fans. The teams, called the Greens and Blues. The factions were made of youths and members of the lower class who had no other outlet to channel their energy. They would show up at the hippodrome to watch chariot races. They would sit in their own sections and try to drown out their opponents with insulting chants. Justinian, by this time, had become the real power in Constantinople. He spent a lot of time supporting his favorite team, the Blues. Most emperors maintained strict neutrality between the factions, but Justinian made no attempt to hide his support. But a day at the races was more than just entertainment for Justinian. The vast network of supporters in the Blues allowed him to keep his finger on the pulse of the city. One of these supporters introduced Justinian to an ex-actress named Theodora. Although Theodora was 20 years his junior, the moment he set his eyes on her, he fell madly in love. When Theodora was a child, her father had died, leaving her mother destitute. She quickly remarried and went to the Green faction, begging them to get her new husband a job. They refused. She then went to the Blue faction, and wanting to show themselves more magnanimous than the Greens, gave her stepfather the job as their bearkeeper. This caused Theodora to become a fanatical supporter of the Blues, which only made her the more attractive to Justinian. Despite the gulf in their social status, it proved to be an inspired match. Theodora's intelligence and energy were only surpassed by her charm. The two became inseparable, and Justinian was determined to marry her. There was a slight problem in that there was a law forbidding a man of senatorial rank from marrying a lady of the stage. Justinian implored his father to change the law, but Euphemia, who adored Justinian, was vehemently opposed to the match and forbade it. When Euphemia died, the coast was clear for the marriage to proceed, and the two had a splendid wedding. When Justin's last illness began in the spring of 527, the Senate formally appealed to him to name his successor. He nominated Justinian, and on April 4th, in the Great Hall of the palace, the Patriarch of Constantinople solemnly placed the imperial diadem on Justinian's head, 6 months before Justin's death. Later that year, Justin finally died of an old war wound. Justinian was now the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. The new couple could hardly have been more different from the old regime. They were both young, he in his 40s and she in her 20s. They seemed like a breath of fresh air. The coronation had been an extravagant affair, and there were those who hoped it was a sign that a glorious new age had arrived. Justinian was like no other Byzantine emperor. He dreamed on a truly imperial scale. He had been steeped in the classical view that just as there was one God in heaven, there was only one empire here on earth. His divine authority was absolute, and it was his obligation to mirror the heavenly order. This was a sacred duty, and the fact that half of the empire had been lost to heretical barbarians was an insult he couldn't let pass. The empire must be made whole again and be filled with buildings and monuments that would endure through all the ages as a testament to the splendor of his reign.